Yo guys, what's up? I'm in my future studio, which I'm pumped about. Got gonna have a RUDIS sign. Oh, the RUDIS sign is over there. Got my computer. Got a little baby bookshelf with supplies. Got the nice bookshelf over there. And I got a good mental Monday this week. I think I do. I need a haircut. P.S. So I was thinking about this quite a bit, and this is a topic I've actually, I've been doing these mental Mondays for, I think it's 3.5 years now. So we've had a lot of mental Mondays, multiple hundreds, and I've stayed away from the topic of toughness, and because you know what, I didn't really know how to talk about it without making it seem as though I'm really bragging, and so obviously. In my fight last Saturday night, I showcased some toughness, right? Robbie Lawler blasted me in the face a whole bunch of times. I dealt with it, got out of it. I stayed focused on what I needed to execute on, and then I went and got the job done. So obviously that took a lot of toughness and focus to do that. And so, toughness is something I think I have a lot of, and I've never had to use it in fighting. And thank God. And I hope, frankly, I hope I never have to use it again. But I think it is one of my stronger attributes, and I think it's when we talk about that calmness, the confidence going into fights or matches, the toughness is one of the things that gives me so much confidence because I know really the only thing I care about is that I'm going to put a lot of effort forth and I'm going to stick to my game plan, and that takes toughness. And I know from time doing it thousands of times that I'm going to do that over and over and over again. And I'm not going to fail at that. That's one thing I will not fail at. So now when it gets into toughness, what are my issues with it, and why have I never talked about it before? So number one, I think, would be that people in wrestling think toughness is number one. It's almost to the point where it's the only important thing. If you're tough, everything else is going to be fine. I think, was it Terry Brand, something like, I judge you by the amount of fights you have, which, for high-level wrestlers, I think it kind of makes sense, right? But obviously, as coaching at AWA and people listening to this, we coach a whole spectrum from beginners, 5-year-olds to high-level high school kids, and I coach at the Badge RTC, so high-level college guys, international guys. I'm coaching everybody, and so I think toughness over everything is a false prophet. If that's all we're going to rely on, it just doesn't work. And a team that you never see talk about it ever is Penn State, right? And they've been the dominant player in the game. You never see Ohio State talk about it. They've been the dominant player in the game for the last, we'll say close to a decade. And so I think it's almost, at that level, it's almost a prerequisite, right? You have to be tough to have success. If you're not tough, you will falter multiple times. You will fail. And so people at that level, they don't talk about it that much. And when you hold it up like that, it's a false prophet. So now let's get to the sense of in the beginners and in life. So I think, and I make this point, that wrestling now is more important than it's ever been in the history of America. I don't know about other countries. We'll say America. Because toughness is at a premium. So why is toughness at a premium? So let's first establish that everyone, if they could choose from day one, would you be tough? I think the answer is yes, right? Because we're all going to experience tough times. We're all going to experience adversity. So if you can be tough, would you be tough? I think the answer to that is yes. Now, obviously, no one can just say, "Boom, I'm tough," right? This is not how it works. And for me, I know. My dad was really tough. My mom was tough. And so, I got a lot of toughness just starting out. We're not even talking about going through the process of wrestling and everything else, which, I'll discuss later. But just in the beginning, I fall down and scrape my knee. My dad says, "Hey, get up. Stop being a wimp," right? They don't give me too much sympathy, and that's important. That's something I don't give to my kids. When we give our kids too much sympathy, just leads to negative things, right? It leads to overemphasizing this physical pain when, hey, you fall down, you scrape your knee. Yeah, I'm sure it hurts, but is that big of a deal? Is it going to affect you in the future? No. The answer to that is no. Deal with it. Fine. You're fine. Stop crying. Okay? So, I got that from a young age. So if we all could have toughness, would we all have toughness? I think the answer to that is yes. So I think if you look, we'll say 100 years ago, right? Times were a lot tougher than they are today. And so it's a funny question. Someone actually asked me about this. They said, does growing up in a blue-collar area in the Midwest make you tough? And I thought about it. I said, no, I don't think it does. I go from my heated house to, it was 0 degrees out when he was asking this. So I go from my heated house to my heated car to my heated wrestling academy and back and forth, right? I'm outside for maybe a few minutes. And so, I think where toughness really came into play many years ago is, hey, a lot of people, if you look at the strictly the percentage of people that were farmers 100 years ago versus today, obviously farms are a lot smaller. There weren't as many huge corporate farms. And so, if it is 0 degrees and the cows got to get milked and you got to go outside and milk the freaking cows, whether it's 0 degrees or whether it's 60 degrees, yeah, that makes you tough, right? You got to make that decision. Okay, I'm going to milk the cows. And eventually it doesn't become a decision because you just have to get it done. And you have to say, okay, it's cold out. That's going to suck. It's going to make my hands hurt and whatever. I'm just going to deal with it, right? Those kind of things make you tough. And frankly, there's not a huge percentage of people in the world today, or we'll say blue collar Midwest, experiencing those things. And so what you're having is a lot smaller percentage of people who are actually just tough people. Okay, and so for me, that's why I see like jiu-jitsu, because they actually have adults. Wrestling doesn't have adults. We're trying to make it have adults, but we don't. Or CrossFit. Why do these things almost have like cultish followings? Cultish following, right? If you go to a CrossFit gym, they will have almost a cultish following, and I got nothing wrong with that. And I think when I think deeply about it, I think the reason is that people who go there frequently haven't had their mind tested, right? They've never been tested mentally to see how tough they are. And so when they gotta lift the bar a few more reps, or when they gotta see how many reps they can get in 15 minutes, or when they gotta beat someone else's time or whatever, what that is making them do is making decisions that push yourself harder, go deeper, go farther. And you're going farther and farther and farther into your mind to see how far your body can push. And that it really creates, and if you haven't been there, it's hard to describe, but it creates a unique dynamic. It creates a unique sense of power that your mind can push your body farther than it ever has been before. And so I think that's one of the reasons people love that, because they find toughness, they find themselves, they find a deeper meaning in what they're doing. And it honestly, when you find that type of toughness, it kind of makes the rest of life much, much, much easier for you. And again, I'm not saying toughness is the only quality. There's many qualities that you need to be successful in life, in wrestling, athletics. But toughness is kind of a prerequisite to being highly successful, in my opinion. So when you get that, then it starts making everything else easier. Now, as far as wrestling is concerned, so like I said, we are AWA, are in the business of coaching kids from 5 years old to 18. I get to coach the Badger RTC. So I'm seeing a whole spectrum of wrestlers. And the biggest mistake I think that I see from youth wrestling coaches and high school wrestling coaches is that they emphasize toughness too much. They put it on this pedestal. They make it this false prophet. If you're just tough, everything else will be okay. And that frankly, number one, it's just not true. It's not true at all. Number two, especially when we're in a society which does not require kids to be tough, which does not require kids to be brave, which does not require kids to test themselves, they're not seeing it a lot. Okay? And so the example I like to think of here is if you take a crab, and I've never done this, it's a metaphor, or maybe a fable, I don't know what the hell it is. Throw a crab into boiling water, this crab's going to hop out, right? But if you start turning the temperature up and it slowly goes up and up and up and up, all of a sudden they'll be cooked before they know what happened. And so that's kind of what I think about with toughness with kids. Man, if we get a beginner, we'll say on a high school team, right? He never wrestled before. And he comes out, listen, wrestling's hard. We know that. Do you have to be tough? Absolutely. And you make it the toughest thing of his life. So you're just talking, he went from 0 to boiling like that. He doesn't know how to handle. I can guarantee you he doesn't know how to handle that. He said, oh my God, what did I get myself into? I got to get out of this mess. This is terrible. This is the worst thing I've ever had in my life. One in 50 kids is saying, I've been waiting my whole life for this. 1 in 50. Okay, but the other 49, they're freaking out, right? So, you don't start them out with toughness. You just get them, teach them some moves, let them enjoy it, let them battle a little bit. Obviously, it's probably already, just being there is going to be tougher than most of the other things they do in their life. So they're going to get a little tougher. And then, you start turning it up a little bit. You make practice a little harder. And then by the time they're a couple years in, they got a little buy-in, and they're not going to quit easy because now they've got some skin in the game. They got 2 years invested in this thing, and so when it gets a little harder, they're going to say, okay, I got to figure out how to get through this. And they're going to figure it out. So I think people putting toughness on a pedestal, making it a false prophet, I think that's a real issue. Now, if we want to create super tough athletes, this is my recipe for super tough athletes. And this is another thing I think a lot of people do wrong is, there's thing in wrestling, break people. We want to break people. And we do, when we're competing, right? But in my opinion, the last thing you want to do to your athletes is break them. Listen, I've never quit in my life. Never once. I'm not going to, ever. But I think I'm a unique case. I think I had toughness from the get-go with my parents. I think that was pushed for me on a very early age. I think I didn't get I'll tell you, I didn't get pushed in wrestling probably till like 7th, 8th grade is when I really started getting pushed. So I had that, like I said, we're talking about that period where we get to warmed up to it. I got to get warmed up to it, right? I didn't get thrown in 2nd grade and then say, oh my God, he's not tough. He's not going to make it. It didn't happen to me, right? So I really started getting pushed by 7th, 8th grade. High school, I got pushed hard. But I was all the way in by that point. There was no going back. I just had to deal with it. I was willing to do whatever it took at that point. And so when I got pushed then, it was like, okay, let's go. But like I said, so a lot of these kids, we don't have to be tough anymore for a lot of things we do. Toughness will help us, but it's not a prerequisite for a lot of things in life. And so the one thing I like to do is I like to try to find kids breaking points, but, kind of see when they're starting. And you can watch, if you watch, there's always a pattern in athletes, their behavior when they're testing themselves. It's like, okay, try to act like nothing's happening. Then you'll see them panicking a little bit because they've never been there before. Then you'll see them expressing some type of frustration because they don't know how to deal with what they're dealing with. And that's when you say, instead of saying, hey, you're being a wimp, don't quit, you say, hey, man, you're doing great, let's keep going. You can handle this. You can do this. And that's where you start building the empowerment. And so then, if we say, let's go 0 to 100. 100 is like the toughest person ever on planet Earth. 0 is just the weakest person, right? So let's just say they're at a 40. You don't go from 40 to 80, right? You go from 40, you go up to 43. Another time. And, this doesn't have to be done. I don't think this has to be done every day. I think this is like a once a month thing, maybe in season, maybe once a week, right? But it's not something, once you establish these levels, they're established. They don't need to be reestablished every single day. Another mistake that people make is they try to reestablish these things every single day. That doesn't need to be done that way. And I think if you look at Penn State, again, I bring them as an example, but well, they're having a lot of success. People should, if you're not paying attention to what they're doing, you're not trying to be a good coach. Okay, just plain and simple. If you're not paying attention to what Penn State is doing, you're not trying to be a good coach. You're failing. Pay attention to what they're doing. There's a reason why they're so damn good. So I think that's something that should be done once in a while. Like in season, maybe once a week, but out of season, maybe once a month. So you go to the 43, right? And the next time you go to 45. The next time you go to 47. Right? And the goal is, let's say, take this kid from a 7th grader to a high school kid. We don't got to go from 40 to 100 from 7th grade to 8th grade, right? We have 6 years to do it. So just, once a month, every once in a while, crank something up on them. Crank something up. Get them to be a little tougher than they were before. And when they're experiencing those things, when they're experiencing that thing where in their mind where they say, I think I'm going to fail. I don't think I'm tough enough to do this. You say, hey, man, you're doing all right. You're going to make it. Let's go. I believe in you. And listen, I guarantee you that will get them to the next step.